I hope they click, I hope they see. Be the critic you always have to be. Review, don't judge, they need to know. The views will grow. Watch my show, watch my show. The edit took all damn day. Watch my show, watch my show. Turn it on and let it play. I don't care what the comments say. They might leave a like. The trolls never bothered me anyway. This is movie night. Hello and welcome to Movie Night, the only review show not afraid to review a 77-year-old kid's movie the same weekend Godzilla comes out. I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. Tonight we'll take another look at the animated classics from Walt Disney Studios, beginning with their inaugural effort, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The one that started it all, the first ever full-length cel-animated feature film, and the first ever by Walt Disney Productions. Following its premiere in December of 1937, this now famous fantasy adventure film broke records with an $8 million take during its initial box office run. Following plenty of re-releases and inflation adjustment, however, its $910 million gross makes it one of the top 10 most successful films in American history. Which is a fortunate outcome, as Disney himself had to mortgage his own home to help finance the film, which racked up costs totaling more than $1.5 million, a huge sum in those days. Based on the famous 1812 German fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, this 83-minute movie has an amazing quaintness to it that honestly makes it a bit hard to criticize appropriately. Much like my comments on The Wizard of Oz, this particular gem of cinema is near impossible to separate from its fame, influence, and its status in our collective lexicon. That being said, this remains a wonderful fable for all ages, over 75 years after its release. For the small minority unfamiliar with the classic tale, the approved rated story follows the title character as she hides out in the forest with 7 mischievous and eclectic dwarfs after escaping the wrath of her wicked stepmother. Adriana Caselotti portrays the innocent and lovely princess, whose nasally voice also leads one of the picture's old-fashioned musical numbers. Meanwhile, Lucille Laverna plays a villain literally titled the Evil Queen, who lives up to her name by ordering a hit on Snow White simply for being too pretty, a truth she discovers after famously asking her omnipotent wall-hanging furniture, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" From a plot standpoint, the tiny dwarves function as a single character, but ask any kid and they'll be quick to tell you they all have very specific and unique personalities, each one characterized by their helpfully descriptive names.
It's after us! Don't let it out! Hold it shut! Give it to him! Don't let him get away! That! Hold on there! It's only dopey!
Although it's a bit choppy at times, the animation and visuals here are otherwise outstanding, especially considering when and how they were created. All of these beautiful and detailed visuals are supported by a wonderful score from Frank Churchill that flutters between ominous and frightening to playful and whimsical. Supervising director David Hand manages to assemble all of the moving pieces into a delightful, if often pointless arrangement of scenes. Indeed, a large portion of the middle of the movie is just playful antics and dancing, devoid of any real substance. But since it's rather amusing watching Dopey try to dance alongside Snow White while standing on Sneezy's shoulders, it's easy to forgive these issues. In the end, however, Snow White requires a nameless prince to save her. No one really learns any lessons or morals, and the ragged old evil queen sees a more violent and permanent ending than most Disney villains deserve. Harmless fluff that begat a lifetime of classics, when separated from its far-reaching influence and examined objectively, the movie is nothing more than an impressively accomplished children's film without a lot of rewatch value. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a classic fairy tale, imaginatively animated. Let's read some YouTube comments now to hear your thoughts. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, an 8 and a 7. Despite being frightened by it as kids, most of you really enjoyed this film and its characters, but you recognize its faults, scoring it a great. Certainly an important film, especially for breaking ground in the animation genre, but the film's simplistic story and lack of any real conflict make it an average film with a special legacy. I thought it was cool. Fast forwarding 30 years, next up tonight is The Jungle Book. Contrary to its curiously irrelevant title, this is actually a feature film, and not a book at all. The Wolfgang Reitherman animated family adventure film was released in October of 1967 and has since earned over 50 times its small $4 million budget from 3 separate theatrical releases. Very loosely inspired by Rudyard Kipling's book of the same name, Walt Disney's 19th animated feature is notable as it is the last one he produced, having died during production in 1966. The extremely short but still leisurely paced 78-minute story follows a young human's journey as he ventures through the jungle with a talking bear after a childhood of being raised by wolves. Along the way, he encounters friends, foes, and plenty of musical numbers to keep the youngsters in the audience entertained. Unfortunately, that's it though. The plot here is extremely thin and offers very little in the realm of humor or excitement.
You know something? You're all right, kid. What do they call you?
Mowgli. And he's going back to the Man Village right now.
Man Village? They'll ruin him. They'll make a man out of him.
Oh, Baloo, I want to stay here with you.
Certainly you do.
Oh? And just how do you think he will survive?
How do you think he will? What do you mean, how do you think he... He's with me, ain't he? And I'll learn him all I know.
Well, that shouldn't take too long.
Undoubtedly, the most memorable part of the approved rated picture is Phil Harris's central musical number, The Bare Necessities, a swing band style song that sees the anthropomorphized sloth bear he voices shaking his rump and teaching Bruce Reitherman about life in the jungle. Likely scoring the gig thanks to his director father, Bruce does an above-average job as the whimsical and clueless man cub who sees no issue taking advice from a deadly black panther or a carefree bear, reminding them, I'm a lot tougher than some people think. Sebastian Cabot, Louis Prima, George Sanders, the original voice of Winnie the Pooh, Sterling Holloway, and even Clint Howard are some of the names in the film's large cast. On the technical side of things, I'm not really a fan of the layered animation style, which although richly detailed and beautiful, has an inconsistency to it that's hard not to notice. The characters are rendered with bright, fluid colors, but they feel very pasted onto the muted matte painting backgrounds. The low-key score from George Bruns isn't very inventive or varied, and unfortunately sounds a bit dated today, especially alongside some more cartoony sound effects during the action sequences. The film's one-note antagonist doesn't appear until more than 2/3 of the way through. When he finally does, though, a final confrontation between all the animals is fast and exciting, and thanks to some loud music and violent imagery, it'll also likely scare little children. Thankfully, everything is wrapped up nicely in a rushed ending that actually works decently well, reminding us all that sometimes the correct path isn't always the one you think you'll want. Some fun moments for kids, but this movie just isn't quite on the same level as other Disney classics. The Jungle Book, loose narrative with upbeat animals. Here's what you had to say in the YouTube comments. Our scores now for The Jungle Book, an 8 and a 6. You praised the fun adventure and characters, but conceded it is far from perfect, rating it a great. Inherently, my not seeing this film until very recently skews my perception a bit, but I honestly wasn't really impressed by anything. A quick and enjoyable experience, I thought it was good. For tonight's poll question, of the more than 50 animated Disney features, which is your favorite? Leave your response as a comment below. My third review tonight is for The Little Mermaid. Released in November of 1989, this $40 million animated musical fantasy film marked the start of the so-called Disney Renissance, a 10-year period that saw the resurgence of widely successful animated films from the Walt Disney Company. Thanks to a strong heroine, well-written songs, and an inspiring, kid-friendly plot, this G-rated adventure grossed over $200 million from multiple theatrical runs. Like most of us, though, I first saw the film on home video, where it did remarkably well, selling over 30 million copies. Its success also spurred 2 direct-to-video follow-up films, a 31-episode Saturday morning TV series, and a stage adaptation still in production today. Loosely adapted from the 19th century fairy tale by Danish author Hans Christian Andersen, the short 82-minute story follows a teenage mermaid who dreams of life beyond her underwater home, foolishly making an unfavorable deal with an evil gypsy octopus to win the heart of a man she's crushing over. Voicing the title character, Jodie Benson is playful, sweet, and indelibly charismatic, quickly convincing the audience why she's worth cheering for. Her singing voice is equally incredible, expertly anchoring a number of the film's extremely memorable musical numbers.
What would I give to live where you are? What would I pay to stay here beside you? What would I do to see you smiling at me? Where would we walk? Where would we run? If we could stay all day in the sun, just you and me, and I could be part of your world.
Eddie!
Her anthropomorphized sidekicks include a tropical fish, a crab, and a seagull, voiced by Jason Marin, Samuel E. Wright, and Buddy Hackett respectively. In a sort of unlikely mentorship role, Wright is quick to subdue Benson's overeager excitement, remarking, "Somebody's gotta nail that girl's fins to the floor." Indeed, it is a bit far-fetched to believe that a 16-year-old would not only fall in love during a single afternoon, but end up marrying that person the very next evening. Although the humor and gags are clearly aimed at a younger audience, Hackett's goofy persona as an ignorant know-it-all still makes me laugh, and is probably my favorite character in the picture. Christopher Daniel Barnes, Kenneth Mars, and Star Trek's Renee Auberjonois round out the supporting cast of exaggerated characters with serviceable performances, but it's Pat Carroll as the nefarious Ursula that truly steals the show, voicing a scary but quick-witted villain, albeit with poorly explained motives. It's also curious that she imposes arbitrary limitations into a curse she designed, only to cheat her way to victory later on. The landmark sequence is Wright's upbeat calypso number, Under the Sea, which besides being endlessly catchy, also won the picture one of its 2 Academy Awards. Impressively animated with all hand-painted cells and analog camera work, the direction by Ron Clements literally paints a beautiful and imaginative portrait of an underwater kingdom, brimming with life, colors, and personality. Similarly, Alan Menken's score that weaves everything together is particularly outstanding and a pleasure to listen to. Although the quickly paced story is a bit trite and many developments feel rushed and unrealistic, it's a simple and important allegory that teaches children to strive for their goals without compromising who they are. The film is hard to separate from nostalgia, but even 25 years later it still holds up incredibly well. A marvelous experience that has stayed with me all my life. It's also worth rewatching every few years. The Little Mermaid, magical journey with amazing music. Now let's see what you had to say in the YouTube comments. Our scores for The Little Mermaid, an 8 and an 8. You applauded the music and animation styles, calling this a great movie. I have to agree. For kids, and especially little girls, this movie is a wonderful time. And for adults, there's still a fair bit of fun and excitement to keep you entertained. I thought it was great as well. A reminder now to check out the Movie Night Archive channel for an organized collection of all our reviews and to hear my thoughts on upcoming films. Next up tonight, let's review Aladdin. Released just before Thanksgiving in 1992, this $28 million animated musical fantasy was the most successful of the year, eventually grossing over $500 million at the worldwide box office. Ron Clements and John Musker adapt the ancient Arab folktale for the big screen, with a cast of familiar voices, led by Scott Wagner of Full House fame. The 90-minute story follows Wagner as the title character, a poor street urchin who uncovers a magical genie after falling in love with a beautiful princess. He's motivated early by a passing prince who reminds him, "You were born a street rat, and you'll die a street rat."
Come on, let's get out of here. Gotta keep one jump ahead of the breadline, one swing ahead of the sword. I steal only what I can afford. That's everything. One jump ahead of the lawmen. That's all, and that's no joke. These guys don't appreciate I'm broke.
Riff-raff! Street rat!
Scoundrel!
Take that!
Just a little snack, guys.
Rip him open, take it back, guys!
I can take a hint, gotta face the facts. You're my only friend, Abu.
As one of the all-time great animated characters in cinema history, Robin Williams is perfectly cast as the bright blue genie, hilariously rattling off a string of jokes, sight gags, anachronistic impersonations, and even singing a song or two. In fact, the famous comic improvised so much the movie recorded over 15 hours of material for his role, and prevented the script from being eligible for a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination. It may seem commonplace today, but 20 years ago, having a major movie star voice an animated character was a relatively new concept, but thankfully it paid off. Williams' manic performance alone makes this worth seeing. Particularly fantastic is his introductory song and dance number, Friend Like Me, which flies by with some extremely unique and inventive animation, backed by Alan Menken's wonderful music. Jonathan Freeman, Linda Larkin, and the annoyingly foul-mouthed Gilbert Gottfried portray the rest of the colorful, if stereotypical cast. Special mention needs to be made for Frank Welker, though, an extremely talented but generally unknown voiceover artist who has nearly 1,000 credits to his name, mostly all specializing in animal sounds and other unique vocal effects. Here he provides personalities and voices for Abu the Monkey and Raja the Tiger, among other characters. His career has been so prolific that the combined gross of all his projects is second all time behind only Samuel L. Jackson. Back to the film though. At its heart, it's a fun adventure set in an exotic location with likable characters, a simplistic romance plot, and plenty of goofy hijinks. As expected, Disney's trademark animation style is vibrant and beautifully rendered, especially in the film's Oscar-winning sequence For a Whole New World. As has been my faux criticism of all children's films, the quickly paced story is a touch heavy-handed and rushed at times, but the characters and music provide a lovely experience that'll remind kids it's important to be true to yourself and not get wrapped up in materialistic endeavors. Eventually spawning 2 sequels, a TV series, toys, video games, merchandise, and a Broadway play, this G-rated movie is a timeless classic people of all ages can enjoy again and again. Aladdin, sparkling fable with hilarious moments. Now let's read some of your reviews. Aladdin on the Ratomatic, a double 9. You applauded the musical numbers and of course Robin Williams as the genie. You thought the movie was awesome. Since it's so hard to separate this picture from my childhood, I simply won't. I loved it then and I still do today. I think it's awesome as well. Our last review tonight is for Frozen. The 53rd and latest project from Walt Disney Animation Studios was released on November 27, 2013, and quickly became a massive success, grossing an incredible $1 billion in profit against its $150 million budget, making it the highest grossing animated film of all time. Inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen fairy tale, this 102-minute feature follows a pair of sisters, one who inadvertently traps an entire kingdom in eternal winter, and the other who sets out on a journey to save her. The themes and plot turns will be familiar to older viewers. The royal children abandoning their kingdom following a tragedy is something we've seen before in The Lion King, but the variations in presentation are different enough to make this film unique and enjoyable. Christian Bell, Idina Menzel, Jonathan Groff, and Josh Gad make up the core group of players, each one perfectly voicing an interesting and quirky character. Gad is particularly fun to watch as the curious and plucky snowman, who later provides the film's most poignant moment when he puts love above his own safety, confessing, "Some people are worth melting for." Meanwhile, Menzel is a true showstopper, elevating the picture to enormous heights with her impeccable singing, especially in the film's breakout musical number, Let It Go, which scored the PG-rated animated comedy one of its 2 Academy Awards. Much has been said about this now famous song, but its overwhelming power and catchiness can't be understated. It is a defiant return to form for Disney after years of less than memorable outings.
Let it go, let it go. I am one with the wind and sky. Let it go, let it go. You'll never see me cry. Here I stay. Let the storm rage on.
Disney had considered producing this picture as early as 1943 and began a more concerted effort in the early 2000s that was also eventually scrapped, before finally being managed by co-directors Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee. The pair do a fantastic job bringing the majestic and wonderfully computer-rendered world of ice and snow to life, in a way not likely possible with conventional animation. The catchy music will have kids coming back again and again, but even with the sound off, this film is a true sight to behold, really showing off some of the best visuals in Disney's long and illustrious history. It's not just the larger spectacles littered with millions of tiny snowflakes, but also the detail elements, like Gad hurriedly knocking over a dozen chess pieces. Reminding kids to value family and friendship over fleeting romance is a new angle for Disney, but certainly a welcome one, resulting in a decidedly fresh and original take on their classic formula. While I wasn't a fan of every song or character, and certain shortcomings were all too predictable, this movie should provide endless entertainment for youngsters and a great adventure for adults. Frozen. Wonderful music with exquisite visuals. Lots of feedback for this one, so now let's take a look at 6 of your comment reviews. A 9 and an 8 for Frozen. While a few of you thought it was overrated and boring, the majority enjoyed the music and the twist on the familiar. You rated this an awesome. I would have been undeniably more entertained by this film if I were 20 years younger and female, but as is, I thought it was a strong story and a pleasant experience. I'll rate it a great. Finally tonight, let's see what you're saying about films currently playing in theaters with some of your tweet critiques. If you see a new movie in theaters, tweet your review with the JPMN hashtag. Next week we'll be reviewing 3 brand new releases: the frat house comedy Neighbors, the latest incarnation of Godzilla, and opening later this week, X-Men Days of Future Past. If you get a chance to see these films, share your opinions by voting in the polls below or by leaving a comment review. If you'd like to watch more movie night reviews, check out the related videos on the right, or click subscribe to be notified of all new content. Also, please follow me on social media for updates between episodes. Once again, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thank you for watching and listening. Until next time, have a good movie night.